Because conservative ideologies are rarely supported by science, conservative politicians and pundits have to figure out a way to convince their voters that they don't have to listen to science, which is literally just understanding the world. And they do this using labels. The first one is bias. Bias is not just when the results of a study support political beliefs. When a scientific study comes back and says, yeah, climate change is real and directly caused by humans burning fossil fuels, and yeah, bringing people out of poverty lowers crime rates. Those things being supported by scientific data does not mean that scientific data is biased. That's an incorrect use of that term. Now, I think you're getting the cause and the effect mixed up, right? You're saying science is biased towards the left, whereas the reality is leftists just tend to base their ideologies in the science and in the statistics. So it's going to seem biased if your idea of what bias is just supporting a political ideology that's not yours. Bias is something that would be affecting your data set such that an analysis of it that doesn't factor in that bias is not going to draw the conclusions that you think you can draw, right? An example would be if I told you 100% of people in America believe that Trump is a good president. Hopefully, you would say, well, that's not right. Even if you are conservative, you'd say, well, there's definitely people in America who don't think Trump is a good president. That's a good critical thinking question. And those are the kinds of questions you need to ask every time you hear something or read a headline. And so the question then you would say is, well, where did you get that number? And then I told you, I went to a Trump rally and I asked every single person there, and every single person said, yes, Trump is a good president. Hopefully your bias alarm is on high alert because, well, yeah, you went to a Trump rally and asked people. You can't say that the people at a Trump rally are representative of every American. That's called finding a sample size that represents your population. And that's what I talk a lot about in the statistics rants. Conservatives have heard actual scientific experts use the term bias to say that a scientific study is one that we can't trust or one that we can't use. And then they just apply that to any time a scientific study doesn't support their worldview. Right? And that's not bias. Another way they use labels is by saying, look, sometimes, and this is true, one or a few scientific studies or one or a few scientists can be bought and paid for. A study can be funded by an organization that wants to see the results come out a certain way. And so conservatives would have you believe that because one or a few scientific studies have been bought or influenced by money, well, you don't have to listen to any of them. If you label it as science or experts, I know that things with science and expert labels can be bought sometimes, so I don't have to listen to that because they're in the same category. It's a really effective propaganda tool to teach you that you don't have to listen to what the experts are saying. First of all, this isn't how we do statistics because that's not representative of the larger scheme of things. That's the small minority. Second of all, yes, one or a few scientists, one or a few studies can be influenced by money. However, when that study comes out, or when that scientist publishes a paper, it goes out for the rest of the field to see. And so scientific consensus is what happens when that study comes out and people all across the field are over and over and over again trying to say that that thing is wrong. They're trying to undermine it and disprove it, and they are unable to do so. And as much as you can buy one or a few scientific studies or one or a few scientists, you cannot buy scientific consensus. Let me be clear, scientific consensus could be biased. What that means is that something is happening and influencing our data that we are not aware of. And so we have to use robust statistical methods to weed those things out. And that's how our scientific understanding and how scientific consensus grows over time. It's always changing and moving forward.
The label of research I see misused a lot. Do your own research. The problem is this usually means Google stuff, look for stuff on the internet until you find what you're looking for. And as I've stated earlier in this rant and in other rants on academia, science and academia are based in the experts over and over again, usually over the course of months or years, trying to disprove an assertion. If you're searching for things until you find a thing that proves you right, you're not doing research. Research is peer-reviewed. When you submit an article to a scientific journal, you have to get it through at least 2, but sometimes up to 4 or 5 other experts in the field reviewing your paper to say, Does this make sense? Do the methods hold up? Is there bias in this that we can at least identify? Have you addressed your assumptions? Have you followed the scientific method to try to eliminate bias?
And I wanted to add, this doesn't just apply on the scientific scale. It applies on the news scale. Just because you heard something from MSNBC or CNN, I know I give Fox News shit, but just because they sometimes lie about things, you can't just call whatever it is biased and use that as a way to say anything that comes from CNN or MSNBC or Fox News is automatically biased. I am not saying those organizations do not have bias. I am saying look into the headlines you hear and the stories you hear before you just brush them off as biased, because there are going to be times that every news organization has some degree of truth to it.
If you're concerned about bias from a news source, you should be. Look for other sources that give you more information on the story or the headline you're hearing. You can limit, if not eliminate entirely, bias by diversifying your sources.
So again, the point of this and the past 2 videos I put up is just don't let a label of something tell you how to feel about that something. Learn what the label actually means.
Because letting labels tell you how to think makes you susceptible to propaganda.